A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
Did the Jewish people fast on Tisha B'Av during the period of the Second Temple?
This is a very interesting question, of which many people are not fully aware, but there is in fact a mahloket, a discussion amongst the Rishonim as to what was the reality during the time of Beit Sheni, the time of the Second Temple. According to most of the Rishonim, such as Rashi and Tosafot, there is no question that the Jewish people did not fast on any of the fast days during the time of Beit Sheni, including Tisha B'Av. The Gemara, the Mishnah and the Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, Daf Yod Het, Amud Aleph and Bet 18a and b, discusses the fact that the Jewish people fast on Tisha B'Av, for example, and that messengers are sent from Yerushalayim to inform people when Rosh Chodesh was set, which day was set as Rosh Chodesh Av, the beginning of the month of Av, so people would know which day the fast fell. The question is that Mishnah referring to the time of the Mikdash or to the period after the Mikdash? According to most Rishonim, that Mishnah is referring to the period after the destruction of the Beit Mikdash. Whereas during the time of the Beit Mikdash, these Rishonim understand that no fast day was commemorated as a fast day because of the Pesukim that we find in Sefer Zechariah. In Sefer Zechariah, in Perek Heth, we find that the Navi says that these fast days of the 4th, the 5th, the 7th and the 10th months, that is to say the fast days of Tammuz, Av, Tishrei and Tevet, these days will become days of Sason and Simcha, of celebration and not of fasting. The question is, to what period of time was the Navi referring? In other words, we are not talking only about how one understands the Mishnah and the Gemara on that Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, we're also talking about the understanding of the Pesukim in Sefer Zechariah. That which Rashi says in Sefer Zechariah, in his Perush on Sefer Zechariah, Rashi also repeats in his Perush on the Gemara. In Sefer Zechariah, Rashi explains that the Navi told the Jewish people at that time, who had asked the question, should we continue to fast now that the Second Temple is being rebuilt? The Navi said to the Jewish people that now that the temple is being rebuilt, you are not to fast, but rather these days, in fact, are days when it is forbidden to fast, and you must in fact rejoice and thank Hashem for the great improvement, the turnaround, in fact, in the affairs of the Jewish people. This is also how Rabbi Avraham ibn Ezra explains the Pesukim in Sefer Zechariah. On the other hand, we find in the Perush of Rabbi Yitzchak Abarbanel and also in the Malbim, who follows largely in the footsteps of the Abarbanel, we find that that statement in Sefer Zechariah in chapter 8 refers not to that time, that point in time when Zechariah was speaking to the people, but rather to a future time. And the promise that these fast days would become days of rejoicing, it refers to a time when the Jewish people will do teshuvah in a more complete sense, and will live according to Hashem's instructions and precepts. And at that time, Hashem promises that the affairs of the Jewish people will go from strength to strength, and at that time, these fast days will become days of celebration. As to the question of how the Jews of that period, of the time of the beginning of the Second Temple, should have behaved regarding these fast days, according to the interpretation of the Abarbanel and Malbim, the answer was that it's really irrelevant. You can do as you please, because all along, says Hashem to the people, you took upon yourselves to fast. It was your idea to do so in response to the Khurban and the tragedies that befell you. And now what I demand of you, as always, is that you follow the Torah and you live according to the Torah, according to what I have laid out for you, and whether you fast or not is really up to you. With regards to Tisha B'Av, during the time of the Second Temple, we find these two interpretations. Rashi and Tosafot and other Rishonim say that it is obvious that during the time of the Mikdash, the Jewish people did not fast on Tisha B'Av because they claim, they understand, that as long as the Mikdash stands, there is no fasting and there is no aviluth, no mourning. Rambam, on the other hand, and this is considered by some poskim to be very surprising, such as the Tashbetz, Rabbi Shimon Bar-Semah in Shut Tashbetz, Helik Bet Siman Resh Ayin Aleph, he expresses the view, for example, that it is impossible. He is very surprised that Rambam says this, and he expresses the view that it is impossible to adopt such a view. But the fact is that other Chachamim have explained Rambam's position, as we're about to do now. Rambam says that they did fast during the time of Bayit Sheni on Tisha B'Av, not the other 3 fast days, but during the time on Tisha B'Av, during that period, the Jewish people did fast. And the question is why? The Gaon of Rogachov, Rabbi Yosef Rozhin Zitzal, points out very correctly in his work Sofnath Pa'anach on the Rambam that the Rambam has a different understanding of the concepts of Geula and Churban. Rambam looks at the reality of Bayit Sheni and sees an imperfect reality, because on the one hand there was a Mikdash, on the other hand the Jewish people, for the most part, for the vast majority of the time of Bayit Sheni, were living under foreign rule, foreign subjugation, and sometimes things were very dire indeed, but certainly things were far from perfect. And according to the Sugya and Rosh Hashanah, it is only when things are perfect that the fast days are to become days of celebration. For example, we find in Sefer Ezra, in chapter 9, Pasuk 9, Ki avadim anachnu. This is being said at the same time, roughly, or approximately the same period, that Zechariah Navi gives his answer to the Jewish people. In other words, the early stages of Bayit Sheni. And here we find in Sefer Ezra, the situation is being described as Ki avadim anachnu. We are subjugated. Uva'abduthanu lo azavanu Elohenu. But Hashem has not abandoned us. Wayat alenu hasad lifnei malchei faras. And Hashem has shown us favor and put us in the good graces of the emperors and the heads of the Persian Empire. Lathath lanu mihya, to give us some hold on a national existence here in Eretz Yisrael. L'romem et beth Elohenu, to rebuild the Mikdash. U'lahamid et horvotho, to rebuild it and the city. W'lathath lanu ghader, and to give us a foothold b'Yehuda of Yerushalayim. In other words, the reality of living under Persian occupation, Persian conquest, being part of a foreign empire, is plainly and openly being described in Sefer Ezra as being in the situation of Avduth. If that is the situation of Avduth, which pertained for the most of the time of Bayit Sheni, initially under the Persians, afterwards under the Greeks, and later under the Romans, and in fact things got progressively worse. The Persians are relatively benign, the Greeks less so, and the Romans even less so. In other words, the situation became more and more severe and dire. The fact is that the Jewish people living in that reality are described in Sefer Ezra as being in a state of avduth, of subjugation. That is not a situation that can be described as one of shalom, of peace and of calm, where the situation is entirely satisfactory, as the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah discusses. Therefore, Rambam understands that both the Psukim in Zechariah, which he understands to be referring to a future time, not the time of Bayit Sheni, and the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, which talks about Tisha B'Av being kept as a fast day, he understands that to refer not only to the time after the Churban, but also to the time prior to the Churban. And this seems a very rational and a reasonable understanding of the historical realities, whereas according to the views of other Rishonim, such as Rashi and Tosafot, that when there is a Mikdash, there is no fast day, and that this is the only yardstick by which to judge the historical reality of a particular period, we find ourselves in a rather strange position of being in a situation of avduth, of a situation which is far from perfect, although there is a Mikdash, that's true, but again, that's not the only consideration, or at least according to Rambam it's not, whereas according to Rashi and Tosafot, that seems to be the only consideration. And this seems to tie in very precisely with two different positions, as the Rogatchover points out, regarding the Geula and the Churban. According to the Rambam, Geula is a situation which is made up of many elements. The Mikdash is one of those elements, a very major element, but it is not the entire picture. It is not the only consideration. Whereas in the eyes of others, questions of national sovereignty, independence, freedom, etc., are apparently of much more minor importance when compared to the issue of whether the Mikdash stands. So, do we know what went on at the time of Bayit Sheni? We can't be certain in terms of what actually was done, but according to Rambam, Tisha B'Av was kept as a fast day because the situation was not as it should be, not the ideal and normative reality of the Jewish people. And that is in fact why we also are required to fast on Tisha B'Av today, because today we may have many elements in our national existence which are in every way superior to that which existed during the time of Bayit Sheni, but the one major issue that is lacking in our national existence and also in our personal lives is the Mikdash. And therefore we are required to fast nowadays on Tisha B'Av.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.